Julian, you said you were going to get your dog. Where's your dog?
No, he took his dog out for a walk, Alan.
Yeah, but he said he was going to put it on his lap,
No, I
Oh,
right?
didn't. But I could. But he's hold on.
okay. So, guys, we're recording, and Julian, I was just saying because Alan's having some video problems, we're going to do gallery view. So I hope that if anyone's not comfortable with gallery view, switch your camera off. But welcome. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And hi, Robin. And in particular, welcome to Allan Flood, who is a dear friend, even though we've only ever met via the internet up till now. And Alan and I kind of stumbled into each other online after I had been down south from Glasgow, where I live. I'd been at something called Space for Connection, which was a kind of loose collection of Three Principles practitioners. And I came home and that night, and somehow I'd heard Alan's name through Jack Pransky, because Jack Pransky had recently been staying with me, and I'm not quite sure how it happened, but I must have been Googling you, Alan, but somehow I ended up Skyping you. I got your Skype address from somewhere, and I just tried it out, and you were available, and that actually happened about 6 years ago. I mean, it could even be more. And
wow, 6 years.
Yeah,
6 years. Wow.
And I just loved the conversation that I had with Alan. You have such a capacity to very quickly tune into that. You have a phrase for it, something like loving attention. I'll let you expand on that in a moment, but I just very readily felt very, very connected to you, Alan. And you told me that at that time you had regular calls with another former colleague of us, now sadly deceased, David Bodman, who was based in Perth in Australia. So from that time onwards, approximately once a month or once every 2 months, we'd meet online, the three of us, and we had these incredible conversations. David at one time had been a Christian brother, and he brought the best, to my mind, of a sort of clerical life to our conversations. And he told me once, I don't know if you were there on that time, Alan, but he told me once that in the Middle Ages, the monastery was the seat of learning, and that the best conversations were where people could share openly and authentically and inquiringly, and it wasn't about the ego, it wasn't about being right, but there was a kind of deep and connected inquiry that would happen, and it felt to me that was certainly what I experienced in our calls. And your invitation to me today, when I asked you to be a guest on these now monthly webinars, the Three Principles Conversations, was to was to have a conversation around that. And I'm gonna let you say more about that. But it really is a privilege to be here with you once again. I'm so grateful to have met you, Alan, and I'm so grateful that you're in my life. But just before I hand it over to you, because some more people have joined us, Alan has some visual delay, so we're doing gallery view tonight. It will be recorded on gallery view, and if you're not comfortable with that, please just switch your camera off. Without further ado, Alan, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Christian. Really, Christian, 6 years. It's hard to believe that amount of time has gone by.
It could be longer. It might be 7.
Time flies when you're having fun. Christian and I have had amazing conversations over the years, like Christian mentioned with David Bodman. And what I've discovered with Christian is that after a very short period of time, we are able to share authentically and vulnerably with each other our our understanding and ideas about the three principles and everything about it. And I thought that it might be useful and interesting to have a conversation with the underlying principle being authenticity and vulnerability, and talk like we normally do about virtually everything, about SID, about the three principles, about challenges with the three principles that people have. It's the whole gamut, and people have their own way of deepening their understanding. I have really enjoyed over the years listening to Sid's tapes and watching his videos and reading his books. And I've been thinking about it. When I met Sid back in 1978, when I first met Sid on St. Mary's Lake in Salt Spring, it was such a peaceful, quiet experience. As I think about that, I'm thinking, you know what? I felt more authentically myself and more comfortable with just being who I was as a human being that I'd probably ever felt before. As I experienced that, I thought, most of my life I've had an agenda or an urgency or an insecurity or something going on in my mind at the same time I was living my life in the present. And as I sat there in that small group with Sid, that wasn't happening. And over the years, I've thought, being authentic and being vulnerable and just being ourselves, and I guess from one point of view, letting the river of thought flow, as opposed to trying to make it better in some way or change it in some way, is really a powerful thing to have experienced. And this morning I was telling Christian, my computer broke last night, and I knew I would be in a Zoom conference hopefully this morning. So the last few hours have been urgent, right? But they've been urgent with perspective as opposed to urgent and life-consuming. One of the things that I've appreciated about Christian is her ability to be authentic and vulnerable, and I've learned from that. And well, I guess that's all I want to say now before we have a conversation. Christian, has anything I've said been interesting to you, or do you have thoughts about authenticity, vulnerability?
Are you asking the group here, Alan?
I'd love to involve the whole group.
Yeah.
I would love to. So, I guess from where I sit over the years, what I've learned is that in the beginning, the group of us that met Sid tried to teach the three principles, and we didn't do a very good job, I don't think, because it was easy to get caught up in the concepts of mind, thought, and consciousness. And some of us were better at being authentic and vulnerable when we were talking about what we understood from Sid's experience. And those were people like Elsie Spittle and Roger Mills and George, and others that were less comfortable with the authenticity and vulnerability piece of sharing the principles. And I would very much enjoy hearing what other people have come to understand about their life in terms of the three principles and who they are as human beings. Um, yeah, I guess that's it. So if you have, if you have thoughts, I'd love to hear them here.
Yeah.
Hello, my name's Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Tony, hi.
Yeah, thanks for thanks for allowing me to speak. Yeah, my understanding, which is only a few years in around the principles and authenticity and vulnerability, is that obviously in a situation right now, talking to you guys, it's lovely to be able to feel that, for me to feel safe enough to really say what I want to say, and I cherish that because I feel safe. Otherwise, I wouldn't have pressed the button to talk, and vulnerable. But for me as a man living in London, for me to feel or to be vulnerable and authentic outside of something like this is disastrous for me. I feel that all it's really done as an experience in my life is allow people to take advantage of my sharing of my vulnerability, or the things that upset or bother me, or sometimes even the things that make me happy, that could be taken away from me, because that's my honest experience of the subject of today, apart from feeling safe to do such a thing in such a group as this.
I have a thought about that. I think what I discovered was the value of being authentic and vulnerable with myself, not necessarily with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference. I think I tend to overshare. So I've learned that being authentic and vulnerable with other people might not be a great idea.
Yeah.
But it's okay, and it's a great idea, and it opens the door to insights, and it frees the river of thought and the flow of thought from the log jam of my insecurities when I'm authentic and vulnerable with myself.
Okay.
That's what I learned, Tony.
Yeah.
So that's the difference,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
just a couple of thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks, Alan.
Alan, could you say more about that? Like, give an example of what that means, what that looks like, being authentic and vulnerable with yourself.
One of the things I've learned, I grew up in a family where it was not okay to have a lot of feelings. It was just not okay. You didn't have a lot of feelings. And so what I learned, what I had was a lot of insecure thinking around deep feelings, especially sad feelings and despairing feelings and angry feelings. And what I've learned, excuse me, over the years is that it's okay to be in despair as long as I'm authentic and vulnerable about it, because what I learned was that there's more to me than that despair. And if I'm not afraid of the deep feelings that scared me in the past, they tend to pass through a lot more quickly. So
yeah.
Authenticity, in order just to say, Alan, you're anxious right now. You recognize that? Yeah. Okay. As soon as I'm authentic with myself, then I may get an insight about an ego game that I play with myself. And I remember Sid used to talk about how if you spot the games in your life, if you see the games you play, they're never quite the same after that. So my family believed that everything would be okay if you looked good, right? Everything would be, which is part of that feeling thing too. Everything will be okay as long as you look good. And so I have deeply rooted ego games around looking good, except that I have a perspective about those now. I have a client in New York who has deeply, deeply rooted beliefs about staying in control of their environment. And so the game they play is being anxious whenever they start to lose control of their environment. They lose perspective on the thought created nature of that.
Mm.
So when we talk, sometimes all we do is talk so that her insecurity around staying in control lightens up, and then she's fine about it. You know, she's fine about it. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, so.
No, that Alan. Sorry to jump in. That's really important because buddy, I have a very similar thing about being in control. I went to the doctor today, and over a specific thing I wanted to talk about, and I was sitting in the waiting room, kind of playing this game with myself, thinking it's just my thinking, because I was very anxious about talking to the doctor and, potentially, what's he going to say? Is he going to want to do tests? Is he this? So I ended up going in to see him. I didn't even tell him. I started telling him about a couple of other things, but I didn't even tell him about the thing I went to see him about. I came away from it and I was like, it's so frustrating because, I listen to Sydney a lot. More now than I used to at the beginning. And I think, okay, right, I've got this now. This is just thought. It's all thought. And then I go in again and I felt I was very vulnerable with myself today. I was honest. I knew I was scared. I was very scared. But there's still a part of me that won't just allow myself to be vulnerable with the doctor, and say, look, I'm scared, or look, could you just check this out for me? I'm scared, I just, again, I swerved it, and I also know deep down that every time I avoid something like that, I'm just making it worse for myself. And it's really, it's really so frustrating. So if you've got any words of wisdom around that, I'd really appreciate it.
I've become so bored with my thinking around looking good. That's the way it's finally come to form in my life. I became bored with it, and because I had the perspective of knowing that I was making it up over the years, it's become less important to me. It's just become less important. Christian, I know you have thoughts. You always have thoughts.
You got me there. I think what really jumped out at me, what you were when you were speaking just there earlier, Alan, was the thing about, and you kind of jumped over it, but it's seeing that you were more than your insecurities. I mean, I'm paraphrasing now because I can't remember exactly what you said, and there's something so crucial for me about that. That was one of my big insights, that who I am is not up for grabs, and it's not who I am is not what I'm feeling in the moment. And of course, I can fall asleep to that in any given moment and think it is, and who are you to cut me off, look at me and speak to me in that tone of voice, and and I'm back in thinking that this is who I am. But the comfort in knowing that there is something, that who I am is something deeper, more connected. Because I grew up in a family like yours, so we just did not talk about anything real. And I mean, there were emotions, but it was mainly rage and I had, I had absolutely no sense of a spiritual self, of being someone connected, part of the whole, and there's just something so comforting to me to get that, you know, the thoughts and the feelings, they come and go, I don't need to control them, I don't need to look good. It what they're doing has no impact on that true self, that the core within, that essence that is unbroken and unbreakable.
Yeah, that's thank you. So I understand now that authenticity and vulnerability with myself, not necessarily with anybody else, but with myself, it quiets my mind. It frees up the flow of thought. It enables me to move my consciousness from insecurity to quieter thinking. It releases the wisdom that I might have in the moment. I mean, I think that being authentic and vulnerable with myself is huge, especially for somebody that learned that it was not okay to just be who they were, you know, to discover that it's okay, like you, Christian, discover that you're not broken, that it's okay to be who you are is huge. And for me, being authentic and vulnerable with myself kind of opens the door. It gives me a way to open the door to say when I fall asleep, up there I go again, I'm anxious, I'm scared, and I don't have to go any place with that. You know, I don't necessarily have to understand the details and the content of all that. All I have to do is crack the door open and you know, saying I'm okay, I'm scared, that's all allows me to move on. So I don't have to get wrapped up in the history and the past of it.
Yeah.
You know, just need to crack the door open a little bit, and that's what I've taken away
Yeah.
from this.
Yeah, it occurs to me that connecting, whenever there's a sense of just allowing myself to connect with that essence, that can only happen right now. You know, it has the outcome of bringing me into the present. You know, I can't connect with yesterday's essence or tomorrow's essence. That doesn't exist. The essence, there is no time in relation to that essence. It's timeless. It's in this moment.
Yeah, this client I have talks about it like she sits in a movie theater and there's a horror flick going on, and there are different ways to leave the movie. There are techniques, there are ways to leave the movie through doing things, exercising, having a couple of beers, taking a walk. You know, there are lots of ways to leave the movie temporarily. But when she quiets down, she understands that she can leave the theater, that she can walk away from that movie. And when we talk and we both quiet down, she leaves the theater. So she understands that the horror flick is not necessary. It's not necessary. And for me, it was becoming bored with the horror flick. You know, I've seen this movie before. I know how it ends. I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to watch it to the end. So I'm going to step back. And it's possible for me to leave the theater. And sometimes I can't. Sometimes I can't leave the theater, but I can sit there with perspective.
Yeah.
You know, I would love it if I could leave the theater. I think that's something that Sid discovered, was that, you know, OMG, I can leave the theater. And I think that, yeah, anyway, that's all.
Yeah. I'd really encourage any of the rest of you, if you have anything that you know, just to share, any questions, because it's unusual to see to get Allan on a call. So it'd be lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things I'd like to add to that. So that's been really helpful, and just some of the thoughts that you're sharing is very useful. I think what was coming up for me was the vulnerability or the authenticity is coming out in a way that says I'm more secure with feeling insecure. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And that's because I know that as soon as I'm feeling insecure, that it's all made up of thought in the moment. And so the only time I get to be insecure is when I forget that that's what's happening. And there's also, I think what I've learned through this journey is that I can accept that I do that all the time, constantly fall in and out of the understanding. But when I remember, then that insecurity can fall away. And even if it doesn't, that's still okay, because as you said, Allan, it is sometimes you do want to be able to walk out of the movie, but if you can't, then understanding, almost it feels like I'm watching a different picture when I have that understanding. So that really helps. And yeah, so for me, an acceptance of my vulnerability, if you like, or my is I can get to a place of acceptance that that's okay. You know, I'm just in a misunderstanding from time to time, and that's okay.
Can I say something? Can people hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine, Marie. Come in.
Oh, hi there. Sorry, I'm not very good with technology, so I've had to download apps to go on via my phone. Anyway, it was just the guy that was saying about going to the doctor. So I completely understand that. And I had to go to see a consultant pretty recently. And like that, the whole idea of this understanding that it's just your thought really kicked in, because before I used to, you know, like probably most people, you worry and you develop scenarios in your mind, and the what if and what will I do, and you know, and that can, you know, really clog up your thinking. Whereas now, with the understanding of that it's just thought, especially that we don't know the missing link, and it's that missing link we don't know. And I felt that, like, for example, you know, I could engage in other activities and then still enjoy myself, knowing that I was going to see this consultant, but I didn't really allow myself, sorry, the word is not I didn't allow myself, it was there, but I didn't worry about it because I knew that we didn't know what the future held. But it's that missing link that the principles talk about, you know, because we just don't know. So the whole thought process, it gives you such a calm feeling that you say, right, okay, well, let's just wait until it happens. And then when it happens, you deal with it then. You deal with it at the point when you've got to deal with it, whether it's good news or not so good news or whatever. So I just feel that the principles and the understanding of it has really, it's a complete sense of calmness now, knowing that it's just thought. And the thought will come and it will go like the waves. Sometimes it might be really, really strong, but you know that eventually it's going to go. And it's okay to think, as long as you understand that we don't have the full picture until we have the full facts, and that's when you deal with it. So understand exactly where, and I'm sorry I didn't catch his name because I just caught part of the conversation at the beginning, where he was coming from when he was speaking, going to the doctor.
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, it was Tony who came in. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Sonia, thanks to you too. Alan, what are your reflections on Sonia?
I was at the doctor just a couple of days ago, and what I try to do now with the doctor is be authentic and vulnerable. And I've actually learned to enjoy this guy. You know, he has a tough job, and I it's I I come back to being authentic and vulnerable in the moment. You know, be in the present moment, Christian, because that's the only time I can do that. Is and it truly has opened doors for me. I'm thinking I used to go to a lot of workshops and seminars, right? Like 3 principle workshops and seminars, and I have not done that for a while. And one of the reasons is just because I realize that you know, it feels so good to be in those conferences and those workshops. It's like a warm water bath. And what happens is that in those workshops, it feels so good to be myself, to be who I am, to not have any agendas, to be around other people who feel great about being themselves. And I've been less drawn to that, just because I've found that, you know, being authentic and vulnerable with myself gets a piece of that. It doesn't get with the great community feeling. You know, there's nothing better than that feeling. But being okay in the moment, being who I am, enables me to feel an entire range of feelings and be okay about it.
Yeah. Although, so I'm just doing my thing here, Alan. Just a wee challenge. Good. So, because it occurs to me that yes, it is fantastic to kind of connect with people who have this this understanding. But as I have taken my own insecurity less seriously, like Sonia was saying, then I do find find myself to, I mean, it just seems to have evolved that I am more authentic, more vulnerable in every situation, or maybe not every, but many. And it's funny, this week I've been involved with kind of work and projects with non-principals people, but stuff that I really kind of believe in. And this morning I was feeling really tired, and somebody that I work with called, and it was really great to connect with her, because it was back into that, tuning into that, we're on the same wavelength, and sometimes in other groups, especially if you're touching on the 3 principles understanding and why it's different, and you're the only one there, it can feel like pushing water up a hill. But what came to me when you were speaking there is something, it's a gift that Garrett gave me. So, that feeling of being tired, he was talking about something else, but even the feeling of being tired in the face of having these conversations and speaking your truth where nobody else really gets it, it's only tiring because you think it's got to be. I'm only tired because I have some hidden expectation that I want them to hear something or agree with me, and the less expectation I have, or the less I have on it, then the less I have any kind of tiredness, insecurity, disappointment, etc. around that. So all of it, I mean, if any of us feel that we need to go to a workshop to tune into our truth, it's not accurate. It's only because we hold on to that belief. Because an example of that for me would be, one of the places I can sometimes really just go there is when I'm on my own going for a walk, especially somewhere beautiful, but it's nothing to do with the beauty. It's just like the circumstances are such that I've given myself permission at an invisible level to drop all the blocks, all the thinking that prevents me being in touch with that essence, that core.
Very cool, Christian. This is typical of our conversation. So as you're talking, I'm thinking, being authentic and vulnerable with myself it's even simpler than that. It's more like it's okay to be who I am. It's okay to be human. It's okay to be Allan. Allan's okay. He's not broken, as you say. So that I was thinking about Elsie Spittle when she used to give her talks. When she used to use a flip chart and draw circles of mind, thought, and consciousness. She used to start those meetings with the statement, I really don't want to be here today. And I always wondered about that. And now I see that is being herself. That's being authentic. That's being vulnerable, so that she quiets down and then touches the joy of her understanding, so that she can then share it with people. So it's even simpler than being authentic and vulnerable. It's more about just having it be okay to be who you are. And then, I look outside and all of a sudden the trees are greener and the world looks better. And how did we ever learn that it's not okay to be who we are? That's such a puzzle to me. How did that happen?
And yet that it's a great question, and yet I would say that is my, as far as I'm aware, up until today, a sense of being worthless and being unlovable. It was my deepest insecurity.
Yeah.
It kind of feels to me like it's something that we're conditioned into almost. It's like you learn to be insecure, or you learn to be not comfortable with yourself, because it's not who we authentically are. And I work in a lot of schools, and I see a lot of young people, and that's largely the biggest bit of suffering that's going on, is that they learn to be uncomfortable or not good enough, and it's not then addressed in any way. That was just kind of what was coming to me as much as anything. Also, something you said, Christian, that when you go, I'm the same. When I go for a walk, I seem to find it easier to get into that space. So I'm okay with that. That if I do want to drop into that space, because sometimes it's so busy round about me, just going for a walk is a great way to do that, because it seems easier. It isn't, but it seems easier. So I can drop into that space when I go for a walk, more so than I can when there's two teenagers who are in the middle of doing exams around me, So yeah.
I think what is heartening is that when people hear, however it's expressed, that who you are is enough. That truth packs a punch. So even after years, in my case, I mean, I was 50 when I came across this. After half a century of that kind of belief, that idea that you aren't broken, who you are is enough. You don't need fixing. I mean, it just went straight into my heart. I could hear it, and I that's something that I notice happen when I'm working with clients or working with groups, and not everybody. I mean, I have also had people say, "Hey, wait a minute, I am broken, and my clients are broken." But there is it's extraordinary how simple it is. I think when you're sharing something that you've seen insightfully around that, how powerful that can be. To the person that you're in conversation with, or the people that you're in conversation with. And I think Maybe you could say more about that, Alan. I know you've had a lot more conversations than I have.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I've had decades of experience understanding how horrible it is to not be okay with who you are, and trying to live your life to fill that hole in your soul. And I've also had decades of experience, especially after meeting Sid, knowing that that's that's too bad. It's just too bad. It's just too bad that all that energy and effort was spent trying to be okay when fact is you are. You are okay. So.
Alan, when we were planning this, we thought we might go somewhere between 40 and 50 minutes. We've gone 40. I'm not rushing anybody, but I'm just, if I would love to give anybody else who's on here an opportunity to come in. Julian, come in, please.
Yeah, Julian, come in.
At this moment, I'm feeling quite human compared to the rest of you guys. There is something that impacted me this year, because it relates to me as much as it relates to I'm going to call him a dear friend of mine. I didn't know him that well, but I'm sure some of you knew him. His name was Jeff Rader.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Now, I met Jeff Rader on a few occasions in person and a number of occasions online. And he always seemed to have it completely down. Like you guys are talking about really getting the principles. And yet, I'm going to use a term here, and Christian, you probably know what this term means better than I do, so you can correct me. But there's something about relapse. There's something about I've had this understanding for 8 years now, and at least twice I have completely forgotten what the game is for a lengthy period of time. And that's how I don't know what happened with Jeff Rader, but that's how I see what was going on there, maybe, was that he knew it. I talked to the guy, he had it. She's shaking her head. Well, you can come in here, Christian, and tell me what your view, but I think I just, the way I see it, just from, is that I kind of lose it. I mean, I'm a little bit better than I used to be, so that when I've lost that understanding, I kind of still get a sense that it's there, but I'm completely caught up by the events or whatever it is that I'm attached to that's taking me away from the understanding. And I have to let that play. Basically, I have to let that play out to a point where I go, oh no, what am I doing? Like, put the shovel down. But I'd just like you to talk about, that would be great. Thank you.
Put the shovel down. Yeah, how sometimes I refuse to put the shovel down.
Yeah, me too.
I refuse to put the shovel down. And I remember somebody asked Sid how he felt when his wife Barb died, his first wife. He said, I was devastated. I was devastated. I lost my best friend. And that sticks with me as I imagine he put the shovel down faster than I would have, but I don't know that. I really like that metaphor, putting the shovel down. Yeah. And yet, even while I'm holding the shovel, there's a little piece of me that knows that eventually this will be over. Eventually I'll let this play out. Eventually I'll get bored with this. Eventually I'll let myself feel the deep pain that is in here that wants to come out, and then it'll be okay. It'll be gone. You know, like all those, even holding the shovel, which, yeah, anyway.
I really appreciate you raising that, Julian. And in terms of, I think what it seems to me that what you're describing about yourself is not, I wouldn't call it relapse, or if it is relapse, it happens to me every day, and I'm fine with that. I mean, it's one of the things I loved about the principles coming across it, that we all do this all the time, and that's what's happening for the rest of our lives. I thought, I'm down with that. That is cool. Because I've been trying to get better. I've been on a journey of trying to get better and getting nowhere with that. But maybe to speak generally about addiction, which, as you know, is one of my areas of special interest, because I used to be an alcoholic. And so I was 20 years sober when I came across this understanding. And I didn't speak all that much about it initially, because I respected that this was something different. But it seems to me, and it's become clearer and clearer, that there are some kind of, I would call them dangerous ideas about addiction in the principles community, that it's just a thought. And it seems to me that addiction may start with a thought. It may start with a lot of thoughts about, I'm broken and I need something outside myself to make me feel better, and things outside me are making me feel bad. And whether that's, drink or drugs or gambling or, whatever it is. But for me, the marker of addiction is a loss of control, and mostly when it's a substance, that you're, a drug, a mind-altering drug. It seems to me that there are physical changes that take place, and just as, or if it was eating, suppose you had a food addiction, you might reach the stage where you had type 2 diabetes. So physical changes have taken place in the body, and it is, this is my honest impression, and it's based on, on a number of occasions seeing people hailing the three principles as the great new hope for addiction, and then being so drunk that they can't turn up at the convention that they've organized on addiction. And it's just like, wait a minute, there are other things that are more effective than this. And to my mind, there has been a lack of respect for that abstinence part. Now, I have heard of people who are able to drink moderately or smoke moderately, having had an insight, but they are really, really exceptional. And I've had that conversation with Joe Bailey, who, as you know, has worked in this field for many years. And Alan, I know you too have experience in this field. And most people, when they've had a loss of control around a drug, don't get it back. That's been my experience after now nearly 30 years of sobriety. It mostly doesn't happen. And if I've seen a number of people, and not just Jeff, kind of take that bit without maybe just not give it sufficient weight. To my mind, that's how I'd really sometimes end up in some what I would call very messy situations. So for me, it's simple. If you've been when I got sober, it happened on what I would now call an insight. I got the gift of abstinence. I didn't particularly want the gift of abstinence. I wanted the gift of not being a drunk, but that wasn't what came. And it just seems, only sensible and humble to be appreciative of that gift, and not play Russian roulette with it. So that's kind of how I see it. And sometimes it's easier to talk the talk sometimes than to walk the walk, if I can put it that way. Alan, is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, when back when we first started quote teaching the principles, I'll say quote because my image apparently won't show my fingers making that motion. But we had such we had such urgency about sharing the principles, and that was the problem. Is we had such urgency, and there's we missed it, I guess, is what I would like to say. It wasn't okay with us to be totally ourselves. At the same time, we were sharing this understanding with other people. And I think that your experience with addiction is an example of being vulnerable and authentic. And I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Oh, Iona's going to come in. Are you all right for a little bit longer? I'll unmute you. I'll unmute you, Iona. There you go.
Sorry?
Are you okay for a little bit longer, Alan? Iona's coming in.
Oh, yes. Who's coming in?
Iona.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that in what you were saying about the whole addiction thing not being taken seriously. I do think there's another thing is also pretending to be okay, because you felt so amazing, you felt invincible for months and months or even years at a time, and you almost built a story about being okay and almost taking this is from my own experience, taking like a bit of pride in that, and like, yeah, this is my story, this is amazing, I won't struggle with this again. So then when you hit really dark places, for me, for my ego, it was really hard for me to admit, like, that's where I've gone. And it actually really helped me to realize, like, I had made up so much stuff about the principles that I didn't even know, that, you know, so many assumptions about myself that I had to be that way. And in many ways, I'm actually kind of glad that I went down again, because I can see where I was going wrong, where I was going wrong before. Do you know what I mean? Like, I had made up stuff about, myself going to be okay forever. And I think that can be quite dangerous as well, because if someone is really struggling, reaching out can be a bit more, I guess, a bit more difficult. And I found it took me a while to be able to be authentic, because I was like, I'm not allowed to say these things. I should be grateful. I should be seeing the best. And so yeah, that was a bit of a journey for me. And I definitely think that often with the addictions thing, it can almost be poo-pooed a little bit, like, oh, it's just addiction, oh, it's just that, oh, it's not. I think we need to let people find out how they feel about it on themselves, because quite often I've had people and they're like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's just this, it's just a binge, it's just whatever. And then that's made me think, oh, well, that's fine, I'll just use that coping mechanism because they said it's fine. So I think instead of telling people what to think about something, it's about leading them to finding what works for them to feel about it. Do you know what I mean? And not just, trying to tell someone what to think about something. So yeah, that's my piece about the whole conversation about like Jeff and everything and addictions. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Iona.
Perfect.
Sorry, I'll kind of come in.
Bertie.
I love what Iona's just said, because I've been dealing with someone who's been going through that process, and they're falling back into addiction. And when he first came, I started talking about thought and how it's all created, and he said, no, it's all rubbish. I've been in the principles for this long time. And today he just broke down. He said, but I just want to go on medication. And I said, and he said, everybody tells me I can't. In the principles, they tell me it's all thought. It's all who I truly am. If I understood who I truly am, none of this would happen today. And I said, well, that's your wisdom speaking. You listen to your own soul, listen to your own wisdom, and follow that. And that's what you're doing. And that's so lovely, Iona. Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
First, I wasn't understanding where he was coming from, and so I just listened to him most of the time. And then eventually, because he kept saying all the time, everybody tells me this, and everybody tells me that. He's looking for therapists, he's looking for this, looking for that. He didn't want to know about the principles anymore. He just wanted to coach him to find a new therapy. But that totally makes sense what you've just said. Totally. So thank you.
He's probably learning more as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Allan, I noticed that we're coming towards the end of our time. I'd love for you to close us out with a few words of wisdom.
I think everybody in this group has discovered the power of their own wisdom. Everybody has discovered that. And for me, and this is just for me, being authentic with myself and vulnerable with myself in the moment helps me find, the next wise thing to do. And I hang on to that shovel sometimes. Hang on to the shovel. And that's part of the wisdom piece. Allan, you're hanging on to that shovel. So, okay, Allan, continue to hang on to the shovel with the idea that eventually you'll either be bored or upset enough that you'll place it aside. That's the wisdom piece. And the wisdom that the three principles wrap around in my mind, they're like words that wrap around this wisdom. And finding the wisdom is more important than the words. So that's just me.
I think what I've seen, thank you, Allan, for that. But I think what I'm seeing more and more and more is what people need to be listened to. And when you deeply listen to them, they find their own way through. We don't have to preach the principles to them how it is. When
Perfect.
they
Yes.
express themselves and listen to their own wisdom.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, Christian.
Allan, thank you very much. Thank you very much once again, and thank you everyone who joined us on the call. I really appreciate it. It's been a lovely call for me. Don't know about you guys, but it's been a lovely call for me, and it's been a real privilege to host you, Allan.
So I'm gonna go try to fix my broken computer, and I'm sure I'll be doing some digging with that shovel, Julian. So thank you for that.